Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Nature Folklore Sessions. It's 26th of June, 2022. Well, thank you for joining me on our weekly time of exploring nature centre folklore, connecting this within your favourite sanctuary space and expressing inspired visions from your sanctuary through your poetry, writing, arts, craft, performance, and problem solving. Now, this is part 4, and it's rewilding ourselves. It's part 4 of our blooming series. And loosely, this is going to be exploring our potential of restoration of nature, natural free spirit within us and around us. And with a rewilding title, we first may think about letting part of our gardens go back to nature, go back to being wild. And the wonderful community of We Are the Ark, and I'll give a bit of a picture of that. There's a sign. That's actually a sign of a guest of ours, Catherine Dorman. That's what she's got in front of her garden, which is very nice. And we live in, if we live in gardenless apartments, then we may encourage our local councils to not be so manicuring on public green spaces and let the biodiversity there have some freedom. There was the no-cut May, which some people complained about because councils let that go on until June. But it's beautiful, all the wildflowers. You know, there's two sides of the coin there. So this Nature Folklore edition will attempt to explore intimate personal changes that we may personally need to accomplish within ourselves. Partly maybe to complain that our council haven't cut the grass in June, that type of thing. And I think we need to do this before being passionate and connected to rewilding projects. And we might love the current rewilding concepts, but our inner culture and mindset, it still inspires us to sustain quite a bit of neat and tidy quest, I feel. So any rewilding we do may be a sort of test the waters approach. Now, through this Nature Folklore edition, we will explore some folklore that may provide some useful reference and imagination to encourage rewilding. And we got one poet today, one guest, Catherine Dorman. I think I've got a picture of her. I only just found out she's Professor Catherine Dorman. Lovely woman. It's been a delight to chat to through the past week. And she's got a lovely wee poem that's coming up very soon. Otherwise, it's going to be me solo for the rest of the show. So I hope you don't mind that being so again. I've been talking to several other poets, though, and storytellers through this week. Lovely chats have been going on. And I hope some will be joining us through some upcoming episodes very soon, through July especially. Now, there was a wonderful dancing at the crossroads during St. John's Eve, which has only just passed us, isn't it? 3 days ago, and 23rd of June there. It's near where I live in Effingham, County Leitrim. And I got actually John Cronog took a lovely video there. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there myself because of an ankle injury. I had every intent to be there. I wanted to do a documentary for you for this show, but that didn't quite happen this year. So I'll see if I can get John's video here. And mouse won't let me go to the picture. There we go. We'll get to the John's video. It's a lovely little short example. This is really Ireland, isn't it? There you go. That was a lovely bit of community fun that happened here in County Leitrim only a few days ago for St. John's Eve. And the long blonde haired woman, Edwina Gucking, that was hopping around and encouraging the dancers there. She's always encouraging people. Fantastic woman. Uh, I will get her on a show sometime. I had all intent of going, as I say, but ankle problem just before going stop that. And lovely weather as well. I hope it will be next year. As I say, Edwina Guckian, amazing all round with dance and tradition anyway. Look up YouTube, Edwina Guckian. Lovely things that follow folklore stories as well. So hope sometime we can invite her onto Nature Folklore quite soon as well. Anyway, these Nature Folklore sessions are videos, tree and water sanctuary support. They're brought to you the support of highly appreciated subscribers, highly appreciated. So thank you very much for your continued support, because without it, I couldn't fund putting on the show today to share with you. And I'm still not covering weekly and annual expenses. So if anyone else can help, please, to be a subscriber, there's a link there, isn't it? That's a very good link, just £1, euro, or dollar a month. It goes a long way to help, or more, of course, but it all helps to keep the show afloat. So many thanks for that. And if you're not sure, if you're not happy about going through PayPal, which is what the Patreon does, you can go through Buy Me a Coffee. That's just you just use a regular card and make a donation with that. So either way, fantastic. Does help, keeps me alive, keeps me with this show for you that we can share. So thank you very much. So let's see, early birds that are with us today. Let's say hello to who's here. There's Sherry, good morning, John, and everyone from down East Maine. Lovely and sunny here, 78 Fahrenheit. Looking forward to this rewilding session. Compared to what we got outside here, which is the lowest temperature on this date for at least 20 years. And there's few sunny intervals, but it's mainly showery and raining. And we've got another wonderful person through the YouTube, Lev from West Yorkshire. Hello, Lev. It's lovely that you joined on here. And the lovely Claire Roach is she's here. She's in Dublin at the moment and tuning in, looking forward to the show. And thanks for joining in, Claire. Wonderful. And Claire, that's fantastic. That must be the Dancing at the Crossroads video that she's responding to there that I started off with. And Terry Slack Hardwick, morning, Terry, from rural Maryland. I'm rewilding my backfield with walking paths. Would have loved to have seen photos of that there, Terry. Would have been fantastic. Maybe we can include them next week if we're on. So let's see what we've got. I've got a few things for you, and I'm going to talk about my handsome frog story again. I brought this up the last 2 years, so I hope you don't mind me bringing this up again, and I'll see if I can line up some pictures. Oh, here's the handsome frog anyway. There you go. And so there we go, and I'll better get moving along. So that's the handsome frog. Handsome frog won't go away. Bye-bye, handsome frog. There we go. And inside my book, Bathing in the Fae's Breath, there's a story called The Handsome Frog. And here's another handsome frog. Let's bring that one up. There you go. And it's in this, I know it's in the printed version. I'm not sure if it's in the ebook version, because I know both versions have different stories. So sorry if it's not in the ebook. But anyway, it's in the printed one. And with the story there, I'm questioning the telling of how the Grimm's brothers picked up stories, often from Scotland, and often they would rewrite them, of course, to make them their own. And when they rewrote them, the Scottish ones were fearful enough, the Scottish traditional stories from the West anyway. But the Grimm somehow made them more fearful than the original traditional source stories. In fact, during the Victorian times, when the Grimms were writing these very abundantly, their tales were actually they were censored. They would bring a book out or a story, banned, because they were just going over the top, too violent, too lustful for children to read or be told. And so the Grimm's brothers had to learn to tame down their stories to make them popular. And the Frog Prince is one of these stories that really had to be toned down. I won't be going in, there's a Frog Prince story. I won't be going into what was censored out. That's quite a long story, but I think you'll be amazed. It would be banned today. I mean, you'd be thrown off of Facebook forever if you put the Grimm's versions on as they were. I think a couple of years ago I did explain a bit more. Anyway, I'm going to just focus on the concept of living happily ever after, which does come into the Grimm stories and the so-called fairy stories, don't they? So let's look at happily ever after, which I actually find is quite a strange concept, really. Actually, I do have a clip from a past Nature Folklore, I think it was 2 years ago, and it features this. So rather than me going over again, well, I'll go off and get a drink of water or a cup of tea. Here's me explaining a bit about my thoughts on happily ever after. I hope this is the right one. What that was, as in a lot of the Grimm stories, is that once the prince was there, and even in Cinderella, the prince at the ball, the whole story ends up with them living happily ever after, which meant they kind of stayed in the castle. They had all these servants beckoning to them, and they had gluttonous food. They had the best of everything, living happily ever after. Is that your sense of living happily ever after? I don't really get that one myself. I've done this. I mean, I've been Ashford Castle, been Locker Inn on very special low rates, because the regular rates, it could be as much as €1,000 a night, and there's a lot more different things we would love to do with €1,000 than spend a night in the castle. And the one thing with these castle hotels, they're always surrounded by some of the best ancient native woodlands that we actually have in Ireland. Ashford Castle, for instance, you're right into the Cong Wood, which is tremendous, it's huge, or you can catch a boat over to Inchegol Island, which is a lovely native forest island full of stories and antiquity, and you can go for a swim there. There's a lovely little beach. So it's funny, if go to the castle, what do you want to do? Go out into the woods. So in the Bathing in the Phase Breath book, I kind of looked at this. What is this happily ever after? How is this story really supposed to be portrayed? What are we being lied to? What are we being educated into with this? Because Grimm's, they made witches ugly and nasty and dangerous. They had slimy frogs and tried to encourage us to be suspicious of frogs because the sliminess was somehow dangerous and evil. And the woods themselves being dark and horrible is where you get bit, eaten, disappear, and very dangerous places. It's best to live happily ever after, in the safety of the stone walls of the castle. So I started looking at the figures. What about the witch? Take the witch. Oh, goodness me. Is a witch an evil person? A person who knows the behavior of the weather, of the animals, of the herbs, and is a healer, has this incredible relationship, and is part of perhaps of the woodland. You might not even notice the presence of a witch, because she is part of the trees, the flowers, and the animals that are around. It's as if she is morphed in and out of it and just makes the appearance when she needs to. Then what about the frog? The frog, was it really a frog? And then in the other side of the wood, there was this prince, a part of another family, another sort of chieftain family. And with the curiosity, as I say, like when I get a cheap bed and breakfast in a castle hotel, after breakfast, off into the woods, maybe the prince was curious and young, what is in these woods? So goes into the woods, and at that time finds what is called the ugly crowdy witch is actually a beautiful young woman, incredibly beauty. And the beauty is not only of the woman, but the beauty of who she is, the beauty of how she is part of the wildness. And that comparison to the conservatism and the regulation and the habit and the code of ethics, I suppose, and etiquette of being in the castle. Suddenly this prince might have found himself in the surroundings that became a kind of sanctuary for him. And in that sanctuary was this beautiful woman. And he might have ended up married to her, or certainly in some kind of union. But in order to live in the woods with her, he would have gradually dispensed of his so-called fine clothes. And he would have adapted to clothing that would have been essential for the woodland. And because the woodland can be damp and humid, then it's as if the clothes that we would be wearing would be slimy as well. And so would it be as he's by the well, maybe watering himself, washing his clothes while he's wearing them, and he's kneeling there. Would he look like a frog? That's the question that I ask. So I suppose the point of the story there is an introduction to this idea of rewilding ourselves. And wait. Right. Anyway, that's my introduction to the handsome frog. And one of the points, yeah, you can tell that was done a couple of years ago. Could try and get in a room at Ashford Council for 1,000 this year. That would be the bargain price, because Claire was saying it's about 5,000 a night. So that's the cost of living happily ever after, I suppose. But it's strange, as I say, I'm covertly using that Frog Prince story to slide into the idea of rewilding ourselves. So let's see, there was a comment or two. New here, Triona, lovely that you joined us from Marburg, Germany, where the Grimms lived and studied for a while. And we have scripture from the tale all over the town. There you go. Thanks for Triona. Lovely having you aboard and sharing that bit with us. Fabulous indeed. Okay, as I say, using the Frog Prince and turning it around. These days, I think we get very excited when we read articles and books on such daring things as leaving part of our garden to go wild. Do I have a picture? I do have something on that. No, the picture didn't come up, so never mind. And we call that connecting with nature. I suppose the picture behind me is a good example of that. But it's funny, talking about connecting with nature, it's as if we've become detached from it. That's how it sounds to me. Or maybe joining up hedgerows to connect woodlands, groves and spinneys. That's a lovely thing to do. There's more groups doing that, something like that. A lovely old picture of that. And this is done so that wildlife can again move along natural corridors. And one of the things that I put in my book is dreaming of that one day. Once upon a time, it was said a squirrel could hop from Dublin to Sligo. Well, if that squirrel could do that once more, that'd be lovely, wouldn't it? A natural corridor from Dublin to Sligo where squirrels could hop all the way along if they wanted to. And I'm not sure if they like the beaches there or not. I'm not sure. Anyway, if they could swing the trees and go through the hedgerows all the way, that would be wonderful, because no wildlife can transport themselves through a corridor across the country and Ireland anymore. So I believe before any of that could actually happen and be possible, I think we have to personally be effective to make such projects happen. I think we need to discover how to dissolve the restrictive barriers that are actually within ourselves. And as I say, thinking of how we try to create happily ever after castles. I think we do that in our minds. There's a squirrel trying to hop from Dublin to Sligo. Whoops, can't find the next tree. But I think we create happily ever after castles like that within our minds. And that might be a restrictive thing against making that nature corridor possible. So by doing so, by holding these sort of castles, I think we let go of that. We become passionately and intimately more interactive of this thing we call nature again. It's suddenly we're not joining nature. We realize we're part of it. And I notice that some mindfulness facilitators, they still do refer to connecting with nature as part of their practice. And I feel that may be denying The we are always have been, never be any different. We're always part of nature. We can't escape that, impossible. So I think holding that thought of connecting to nature is, well, and perhaps rephrase that. Hold on to the thought that we are part of nature, and that's perhaps what the running theme of this rewilding session is this afternoon. Now, facilitators, when I've broadcasted this in the past, they have messaged me and they say, well, I say connecting to nature because people seem to understand that more than me trying to explain any kind of alternative. So I suppose considering the trickster methods that we do use in many marketing situations, saying connecting with nature actually makes sense. And the old reality seems to be that if we are as honest as we can be, we probably wouldn't attract any clients or customers. As to a lot of people, being honest is not interesting enough. That's what I feel. Politicians, especially one famous one at the moment, and their campaign managers, they seem to have worked this out very well. Pretending to be honest, coming up with weird cliche things that's popular is what attracts people, not being honest. Anyway, the process of attraction is fascinating, however it goes, whether to connect people as friends for the process of marketing, or one honest way. And it's funny, a few people say, oh, when you tell stories, they're lies. But they are from the heart, they're passion, and you're using sort of metaphors to explain stuff. So using stories to attract, they work, don't they? Have you tried that? Do you try that as well? Anyway, going back to when I hear connecting with nature, I always get this imagery of tiptoeing into nature. I love this picture of this woman at night tiptoeing into nature. So I've got a clip of me from another one from a couple of years ago of how I was confronted with this separation from nature challenge. Yeah, I'll try and find the clip. I hope, again, I trust this is the right one of my thoughts on the connecting with nature. A lot of meditation and mindfulness people talk about the idea of connecting with nature. And that kind of irritates me because we're always of nature. We're part of nature. We're born into nature. What we seem to do is deny that we are part of nature, and that's what makes us feel separated. And so it's as if we're tiptoeing back into nature, as if our egos are so precious. So how do we sort of disband that whole ego? Oh boy, can't that to a lot of people that can be a no-no and a very painful and very confusing experience to actually be part of nature. I was a mature student in the 80s. Was it 80s? Yeah, it was 80s. I was in my 30s, and I was doing food science because I qualified in herbalism quite a bit, and so I thought of the idea of how can we actually use food in a wider way rather than the idea of herbs as a cure. So I was looking forward to the studies, but on the first day I entered into the university, the dean was saying in the first lecture, now some of you might be here thinking that what you're going to do is learn how to be a greater part of nature. No. What we are here to do is learn how to control nature. And if anybody is not willing to do that, you might as well leave now. The degree is not for you. Well, I actually stayed on. It was reluctant, but I thought, well, I can learn from the opposition, because how can I be effective in what I want to do if I don't know where this opposition stands? And it was well worth taking that degree. But there is this attitude, there's us and there's nature, and it's very important to change that attitude before we can actually rewild. We can't be a sort of alternative exterior God admiring, oh, look at that wild patch over there, and we're on the outside of it. we should be inside that rewilded patch and actually rewilding themselves. And like a comparison to that story, the idea of the prince in the castle is exterior to the woodland and the forest. Yeah, okay. That's my explanation. And during the time I lived in Florida, because we contracted some work well south of where we were living, the work contract was in Martin County, which very few people I think have heard of in Florida. It's not far from Palm County. And we bought a plot of rural building land. It was actually near a very barely known village. It was actually the second white person settlement ever in what is now the United States of America. St. Augustine was the first. And at the edge of this plot was a beautiful native woodland cove. And it was something like this, if I can find lovely pictures of it. And I'm not sure. No, I don't think the picture has come up anyway. I wonder if I can get it up, because it was a lovely picture. I don't know why it hasn't come up. So give me a moment, see if I can find it. The woodland coves. It was beautiful. Don't know why it didn't come up. Yeah, here we go. I'll bring this up for you. Of the woodland cove, to give you an idea what I'm talking about. This is sort of like a natural woodland that you get in Florida, and it's beautiful. You get live oaks, magnolias, dogwoods, gumbo limbos, that type of thing. And as I went in there, and I said it was a lovely place, retreat, and it was actually on the end of our plot of land. And when I went in after one sunset, I was taking the dogs for a walk. It was a great place to take the dogs for a walk. Of course it was. And I went in there, and there were lots of lights gracefully dancing around, something like that, in the woodlands. I'd never seen this before. And to me, the initial reaction is like the imagery were given of fairies. So this was the first time I'd ever seen fireflies. And I prayed that nobody would ever take away this beautiful coppice of life. These fireflies, it gave evidence that there was life thriving all in that woodland, and what a beautiful thing to see. And where we had the plot of land, it was near a wee village dedicated to St. Lucia, and that's a lovely coincidence, because St. Lucia is a saint that said to remove blindness and guided us with light. So there's stories of both. Anyway, I got Catherine Dorman. She's our guest. She's actually a guest on video, and she's got a beautiful short poem about her reaction to fireflies. So I'll bring Catherine on now with her beautiful poem. Trying to think what the title of it is. Through the Door-Marked Summer. That's the name of this poem. Through the Door-Marked Summer. And here's Catherine coming up now.
About 15 years ago, I asked a well-known scientist about why fireflies were disappearing. He said that they needed leaf litter. I began leaving the leaves, and the fireflies returned, much to the delight of my grandchildren. Here's a poem called Through the Door-Marked Summer. Late June, in the mouse gray time, when sun has set and moon has not yet risen, we find fireflies. The 4-year-old cries, "Oh!" The 5-year-old intones like a preacher man, "Oh my God." Wise 7 pronounces, "Whoa." Whoa it is. Whoa is what we all say to every flare and blink. Stars burn, grass grows, an owl calls. The children dart under oaks, their voices flashing, "Whoa, whoa, whoa."
Thank you. A lovely wee poem there from Catherine. That was a real treat. Goodness me. Marvelous wisdom, says Claire. Compliments from Claire. Claire's always given me huge compliments. Thank you, Claire. It's brilliant. I need to get. We're overdue for Claire live somehow. We're going to find a subject and have her on very soon. We will. That'd be wonderful. Now, Taruna's got a lovely addition here. I love strolling through the forest with open eyes. Always come back with more than I had before psychologically. And in terms of edible and otherwise useful things, I love extracting fibers from nettles and spin them. Wonderful thing to do. I'm going to be talking about brambles a bit shortly, very similar. So very much like the motif of the nettle shirts in some fairy tales, I witness children destroying nettle plants because they are evil. And I let them touch the soft processed fiber, and their perspective had changed quite a bit as they looked at plants with much more curiosity. And very important is that it's so useful. The nettle, of course, was useful in so many things. I think we'll talk about them because we've got sustainability series coming up starting next week. So it's good to bring the nettles in with that. A lot of people run for a dock leaf if they've got the nettle stings. And funnily enough, although you're not going to do it instantly, if you can extract the juice from the stem of a nettle and rub that on your nettle sting, that gets rid of it as well. So that's a little thing. And then a res from Claire there. And thank you, Vatch, for the wee poem, says Sherry. A real treat indeed, says Claire. That's what she was starting to type out earlier. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. So what happens when we do rewild? Let's think about that. Many people, they watch The Secret of Kells, and I'm going way back a few years, but I absolutely love this Secret Kells. One of my all-time favorite movies. Let's get the banner up, an advertising banner to give the title. There you go, Secret of Kells. There we go. There's the banner there. Wonderful animation movie from the Cartoon Saloon in Kilkenny with a connection to Boyle, people from Boyle starting out. I'm thinking of Community and Scribes. This is in the film. That were behind the fortress walls. In the Spirit of Kells, the scriptorium was right in the fortress. Look at that. And the tall abbot there. And the abbot was forever calling on the walls to become higher and higher because he had a horrible fear of Vikings appearing, at least, but even more of a fear of his scribes and people in the monastery disappearing into the outside world as well. And this is the abbot. There he is with all the building going on around in the background, just making scaffolding up, walls going higher and higher. And as they were going higher, the abbot seemed to be getting taller and taller as well. And also thinking of the boy scribe there, Brendan, who was the main part of the story. And he was being taught there by Columbkeel how to use a special ink while scribing, because Brendan was an apprentice scribe there. And the secret, in order to make that ink, he had to go out into the forest to get the special pigment. And that forest was outside this fortress, this monastic community that was building its walls higher and higher. And whilst there, and there's Brendan, the young scribe, he meets up with the Ashling. And to me, when we are in what we may describe as a rewilded landscape, they even feature that in the film. This is the unattended garden that Ashling took Brendan to. And it was from the unattended garden that he could get the plant to get the pigment to do the unique scribing, just like Columbkeel. And there we are, among the flow of many all kinds of life forms when we're in a sort of wild situation. And all these wild forms, life forms are dancing. Seems as everything, like the fireflies, all dancing with everything to get through the days with ebbs and flows and harmony. Now, when the land rewilds, and I've got some more background pictures, I'll change them over. But what happens with a rewilded situation, birds arrive, more bugs, buzzleys become present. You get something like that. It's a child out amongst it all, and everything is arriving. You get more butterflies and moths arrive, and of course more wildflowers. And this flow of life is always ongoing. There's no concept. There's not going to be any completion. There's no starting completion. It's just a cycle that just goes on and on and on. So the ebbs and flows in a rewilding situation, it's just infinite. It's an infinite cycle of constant creation, disintegration, and recreation. So perhaps in Ireland, we are safe, actually. We're very spoiled by being surrounded by we're quite well integrated with wildlife here, even though housing complexes are expanding, business complexes are expanding, industrial farming is expanding. But despite all this, and despite really the lack of trees compared to the rest of Europe, we are quite well integrated with what we've got, and there's a lot more popularity for that. Now, elsewhere, if we were living, say, in another country outside of Ireland, we could end up being potential dinner for a tiger or a lion, like this one I showed last week. There you go. So I forget what country it was, but there was a native resident. I'm not sure if it was Africa. I think it was somewhere in Asia. It was more an affluent area. It might have been, Egypt, Ethiopia. I think it may well have been Ethiopia. And there was a native resident. There were these bunch of tourists that went past him. And do they have tigers? If somewhere where they have tigers, anyway, maybe it wasn't Ethiopia. And the tourists wanted to know if they were going in the right way for the tigers. And he was saying to him, well, the tourists want to bother with these smelly, annoying tigers. Well, they're not here to see my precious, lovely cows. So we're so fortunate for most of us that are watching this today to be living in quite comfortable living situations. We're fed, we're sheltered, we've got some health care. We're not surrounded, a lot of us, fortunately, are not surrounded with an armed and destructive war going on, though it does feel it's getting more on towards our doorstep these days. But really, we are blessed with a situation where we can still take time in the days to contemplate abstract concepts. You know, rewilding, it can be abstract, like the man, why is it my cows? You talk to him about rewilding. To him, you know, he's trying to escape that a little bit. Anyway, I think the vision I'm inviting you to have a go at is that when our outside sanctuary that we go to is in a rewilded situation, I feel this is a very powerful recharging of our inner rewilding being, something like that. And that was from the Tree Labyrinth, Carol Croy, and people did that. Now, using modern buzzwords, we could describe this, one of the lovely social media buzzwords, rebooting. We're rebooting ourselves. And some people may compare a process of returning back towards the ways of hunter-gatherers, because there are Facebook groups, meetups, mythals, where people come together and learn some of these crafting skills that they say go back to the hunter-gatherers, and we love doing that. And already mentioned is weaving with nettles, and I'm going to talk about brambles very soon. So thinking about indigenous and ancient hunter-gatherers, I bet if they found, you know, if a car was dumped in a forest and you got a bunch of indigenous people come out of the woods and they see the car in the forest, if they could start it up, I bet they would still use it. And another example, supposing they're wandering around, they find an iPad in the forest. If someone worked out how to switch it on, they'll probably try and use it and learn how to make a bit of a movie with it. I'm sure they would. And, you know, and I suppose another example, if they found a phone that was tuned to TikTok, they would learn one or two of the dances that they watched on it. Anyway, and the one thing I believe the ancient hunter-gatherers were also pretty good at, very good at, was their form of farming. No, they didn't sow or plant seeds and plants, but if they saw some very useful wild garlic or bilberries, hazelnuts, that kind of thing, it seems they would remember such a place and they would perhaps go back and encourage expansion. Here's a lovely picture of a bit of depiction of hunter-gatherers doing a bit of farming around the wild there. That's the nearest I could get to that. So they'd be doing things like thinning away of plants, any competition plant that wasn't particularly immediately useful to them, they would just thin that around so that what is useful to them would expand. So this is kind of farming as far as I can tell myself. Now, I've had the idea, it's been challenged though, people talk, when I talk about the hunter-gatherers as being farmers that way, anthropologists, they jumped on me and they said, no, humans were just constant runners. They didn't have time to bother about cultivation. They were just continually running. They would just grab nuts and berries on the go. They wouldn't remember where they got them from because they'd just keep running. And they wouldn't come back or to manicure or try and alter the crop in any kind of way. So I often ponder on the human role in nature. You know, one thing about humans in nature, we got hands and we can do stuff. I set up the studio to broadcast with you. And I think the one thing that's unique to humans, perhaps more than any others, is that we make things, don't we? There we go. There's a lovely working with wood, but he's a basket maker as well. So we constantly have this urge of making things. And I think that's what makes us unique. That's our part in nature. That's what we do. So maybe that's what we're born here to do, make things. And I believe it's important that while living as creators, making things, we don't deny that may be what we're here for, and that's our part of nature. Beavers make things. Now, I forget where I picked this up, and I'm not very good at this now, but somewhere I picked up that 10% of the day, if we spent 10% of our day outside, around our sanctuary, working in the garden and so forth, 10%, that's 2 hours, 24 minutes. Now, when I was in rehab after my last stroke, both the physiotherapy and the occupational therapists, they were the ones that advised this. They said that part of the therapy was being outside as much as we can. They said that at least 10% of our time should be outside in the open air. So as I say, that's 2 hours, 24 minutes, 10% of the day. Now, some of us may say, I don't have time to spend 2 hours and 24 minutes outside each day. But we really get a good, consistent personal recharge if we do that. Now, I'm guilty more than anyone else, especially these days. I'm not doing that. You know, if you get a rainy, windy, cold day, I might get 30 minutes outside. These days, it's like doing the compost, wandering around, checking things. I used to be, but if the next day was warm and dry, then, and I was doing a lot of the garden, then 8, 9 or more hours outside was not unusual for me. So on average, the 2 hours, 24 minutes wasn't very difficult. But unfortunately, I do have a fatigue affliction these days, and that's frustratingly cancelled a lot of that out. But anyway, for most of us, that 2 hours, 24, that's a nice thing to focus on. So a question and ask and suggest, where is your living space retreat? Here we go. Here's a lovely one. In fact, I'm going to change my back setting to have that up a bit longer as my virtual background as a retreat, because I've got that up as a setting. I should have it here. There we go. So you can have it in my background for a while now. There we go, living space retreat. And there it is in the background. So when is your best time to spend a while in that retreat? Now, with many people, their retreat is their gardens. And let's do it, find a lovely garden picture if I can. No, it didn't come up. I did have lovely garden pictures. Anyway, I didn't get my pictures up properly today, did I? It was last minute, I must admit. No, I don't have the garden picture I was intending. Never mind, I'll move on. So it might be a wild place, uncultivated. Again, I don't have that one either. Because the wilder the space, the more we feel we're being rewilded. And a manicured lawn or a flower bed may benefit us with fresh air. There's no escaping that. But if we're sort of got the lawn and the perfect bed and the perfect edge, it may obsess us with the stress and burden of maintaining order and control. And some people find that their favorite and most active time to be outside It's in the mornings. It's great. Get outside in the morning for the best nutritional benefit. Do I have a morning picture? I really sort of lost. Anyway, let's try that one. Here's the one. Outside in the dawn. There we go. That is a dawn picture. And that's when our serotonin hormones are the most active. And being outside after being in bed, it continues to build up those serotonins as part of our immune system. And of course, after you've been out, and I certainly do this a fair bit now, you've been outside at dawn, go back for a nap. That's perfectly okay. Your serotonins are already up. You're not going to lose that, but the early morning outdoorsness is great. And this causes me to think of the three strains of the bard with this. You get the morning fresh air. That's a solitary time. It's a time of upliftment. And then we rest perhaps for a while. And then we're dealing with people. We're maneuvering around our situations in our work and our day-to-day life. We're in service. We're in challenges. The stuff that goes on in the day after the morning. And that's our Doherty time, which doesn't have to be deep melancholy, but it is when our cortisone hormones are kicking in. And we're eager to get through the day successfully, everybody be happy. And we look forward to the end of the day, review our achievements, our results, especially if everybody is happy. And after all that remains, our serotonins, they convert into melatonins, and that leads into a good rest and sleep, and hopefully nice dreams. And that's a wonderful sauntery time. So those, through the day, we go through the three strains of the bard. If it fits that as well. Then when we awake, we may try to act out some of our dreaming, and that pumps up the serotonins yet again. And that's, I think, if we get outside after dreaming, we really take those visions a bit further in the outside, and it helps us to understand those dreams a bit more. And that keeps us flowing much better through the days. And in a way, that's related to what I was saying. Rather than having a book and a plan sheet, don't forget the visions that you have and the folklore that brings about these visions. Let them guide you through your day as well, because that comes up with a lot of problem solving. And those visions may help us to solve problems than to use Google. Anyway, now I think I'll see, there's been a couple of comments here. A neighbor, and Claire Roach has got a neighbor dropped in, so wonderful cups of tea and things are going on there. And Davina has appeared now. Good to see you here. Good to see you, Davina. And there's Susan Samuel with a beautiful garden, which we featured a couple of weeks ago. And it is slightly wild around the edges. Very beautiful. So with birds, bees, etc. We had a lovely video from Susan a couple of weeks ago. And she loves the early morning cup of tea with all the bird activities. And that's one of the serotonin risers. That's a lovely thing to get the birds in the morning. And that really brings us to peace, doesn't it? Even if it's lovely to rest on a swinging couch. Nothing wrong with a swinging couch outside as well. And the end of the day, contemplating the day, doing that for the sunset. And Trina's got a lovely... something else lovely again. I turned the concrete right outside my front door into a container garden with lots of vines and wildflowers. Love going up the hill past the horses and then onto the forest area. Little spot with a rock on the top of the hill. Lovely sit upon contemplating place. Look at that. Bring tea, tin whistles and spend time. Look at that. That's a lovely menu of recharging there. And Bridget, we're going to have to get your garden back on. Most spectacular retreat garden. And Bridget's got everything in it. There's rewilding, there's a beautiful greenhouse. It's all there. The fruit, the animals, the birds. There's absolutely nothing missing. It's a wonderful balance. And with Bridget, she's one of these people, she can just wave the magic wand and there's this whole garden there. I'm very envious, but she's beautiful with it. Wonderful. Thank you for being around, Bridget. As I say, some here and some of those that are speaking now are part of the Facebook group called We Are the Ark, I'm going to talk about a couple of Facebook groups actually, but here's the book, the We Are the Ark, and it's supporting the wonderful vision of Mary Reynolds, and yeah, Mary Reynolds is We Are the Ark. Acts of restorative kindness. That's the motto, isn't it? The Ark. We are the Ark. Now, one thing that Mary Reynolds emphasizes, we are nature too. We are the Ark. And the main suggestion is to allow part of that she pushes is make sure that some of your garden is wild, and such a space is not just a sanctuary for wildlife and plants to discover and to live within. It's letting the land be what it wants to be rather than what we want to control it to be. And there's no shame from having a messy garden, I don't think. And more people seem to be accepting this. Up until recently, there was quite a bit of concern that our gardens have to be kept neat and tidy. But fortunately, I think during at least the last 10 years or so, we've relaxed from that somewhat. And I actually have another video, and I think this is it. It's about untidy. So I'll let my past videos speak more about this. I had when I lived in Florida in the USA, it didn't matter if you were rural. You had these clipboard guys come around. I never saw a woman do it. It was always clipboard guys. They were always dressed in darks, which is ridiculous for Florida. And they're there to actually measure the untidiness of your actual lawn and your garden. In fact, there was regulations about how high your grass could be, and if it was over that height, you get a fine. Absolutely ridiculous, this sort of control and emphasis on neat and tidy. And of course the school system goes through this. It's how to get people ordered and box shape and highly conservative and neat and tidy. So people, in a way, they have lawns and they have neat flower beds. They keep it neat and tidy, not because they passionately want to do that. Sometimes it's supposedly to look good to others, who others going past say, oh, that's boring. And probably as the case in Florida, so you don't get fined. But I think those days have gone, because there's I gather in the USA and certainly around Europe, that even the local in the urban places, the councils are allowing roadsides to grow wild flowers, to go wild. So the rewilding is actually catching on as a culture, thank goodness. So there's no shame anymore in not having a neat and tidy garden. It's not essential. In fact, the other way round, being what was once called a messy garden, is the way to go. And when we have a messy garden, what we have is a culture of biodiversity, which I was talking about a couple of sessions ago. Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? All right. So that's me talking about messy gardens there. And I think rewilding, it also evokes a vision of us returning to a landscape and even ourselves to a distant past. I think that's the thing we might imagine. But this is really impossible due to the fact there is permanent loss of habitat, and there is now extinction of several species that were around a few thousand years ago. So I think perhaps the best thoughtful approach and very connected approach is be present. Don't try to return to the past, but use the past to help us to shape the future by being totally connected with our present. And that's my approach to folklore as well. So rewilding is still about human intervention and doing our bit as part of nature. And a lot of it is about trusting and allowing natural environment processes, just trusting that the natural processes will unfurl with the minimum of human intervention. Because when we're there mucking around, we've got specific goals and targets, how we want things to be, no matter how free and trusting we are. That's, as I say, the human hands, the motivation to make things. Anyway, within there's another Facebook group, the Create the New Normal. I think I got that right. It's on Facebook. And there was a discussion there about the benefits of brambles. And I've been saying that I will talk about brambles. Let's see, there's a comment or two coming in. I'm Sophie from Somerset, who's joined us. Pammy P, another one through the YouTube. Lovely. Thank you very much, Sophie. Lovely to have you aboard. I hope you'll catch from the beginning earlier, because immediately this goes into archive as well, so people can re-watch. Anyway, to go on, let's talk about brambles. And the benefit of brambles, this was talked about, create the new normal. The benefits of brambles aiding the growing of oaks. Rather than put tubes around the saplings to stop animals seizing them, the more old one, and this is a natural one, if there's no human intervention this happens, is the brambles get around the saplings and they prevent any animals getting through to the oak and eating them. So they become saviors, aid for the growing of oaks. And here we go. There's a lovely example here. There's an oak that's fully grown, and even the shape of the oak, it's revealed itself as once having brambles around it. So look at the shape of it. That's a bramble-surrounded shaped oak. Never mind. And one comment quoted is that the brambles are the mothers of oak, and that's become a very popular phrase. Bramble, the mother of oaks. And this is one of the many modern folklore thoughts that's come out of the Celtic romance craze from the 19th century. W.B. Yeats, for instance, was inspired and created quite an industry from this sort of regurgitated folklore. And he did it beautifully. I'm not knocking him. I think a lot of the Celtic romance, though a lot of people say, that's fake, because these are the students that are looking into medieval scripts and so forth. I think the Celtic romance interpretations are very valuable alongside that. Don't ditch them at all. Great fun. And they do inspire us. But perhaps the first origin of the mother of oaks phrase, it wasn't an ancient thing. It came from this fella. Here he is, Arthur Standish. There's a picture of Arthur Standish. And he came up with it in the 18th century. I don't have a cover of the book or the journal. It was in a journal, and English Agricultural Journal that he wrote an article on, and it happened to be within the article. He wrote the little phrase, mother of oaks, when he talked about brambles. And he was talking about encouraging foresters to start throwing acorns in amongst the brambles to allow oaks to grow. But anyway, that phrase catch on, the mother of oaks, and that spread through Celtic romance folklore, and that's why you hear of that today. But at the time when Arthur Standish was around, printing was still a new thing. Printing and publishing was still new because it wasn't easy to get access to printers. Even harder getting access to people that could operate printers back then. The printing industry really flew in the 19th century. Also during the 17th and 18th century, there was, as I say, the foresters started throwing the acorns amongst the rings of brambles and hoping that the acorns would germinate and the brambles would create the protection of those oak saplings. Now, when oak saplings rise from the brambles, I think the brambles not mother of the oaks, they're more like nurses to them. And so they do feed them, and they do, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, they do nurse them and encourage them to grow and provide protection, nutrition, because the brambles, like the gores do a similar job. They actually fix nitrogen into the soil. Now, before the 17th century, and especially from the 14th century, and this may have started up from the 9th century, brambles were a subject of incredible, well, I blame Grimm's, but goodness me, back then, the propaganda from the church claiming that the brambles were of the devil, and the blackberry juice being of the devil's blood. And then there is the story of, Michaelmas Day, 29th of September. Stop from the 29th of September. Do not pick any more brambles, any more blackberries, because that was the date that some Michaelmas got into a fight with the devil up in heaven, and the two of them went crashing down and landed on a bunch of brambles. And it said that when the devil landed on the brambles, it was the devil that turned them black and turned the juice red. And so when you're eating blackberries, you're drinking the devil's blood. This was the whole church thing that they were encouraging. And of course, the belief was that St. Michael, St. Michaelmas, St. Michael and the devil would jump out of heaven on the 29th, on the Gregorian 29th of September every year, and poison the blackberries. So there we go. That's it. Blackberries, the devil's revenge. There we go. And there we go. And there we go. That's funnily enough an artist impression. There's some really ugly artist impression of Michael and the devil come flying out of heaven. There are really some nasty ones, but that's a gentle fairy version of him. Very unique. A lovely picture, isn't it? So anyway, the superstition was to keep people away from blackberries, especially from the 29th of September. And of course, all this added to the accusation of witchcraft. If women were out gathering the berries, the blackberries, oh, it's witches, only witches do that, picking the berries with the blood of the devil, they're going to make their potions with it. So it just all added up to that witches propaganda. And there are actually similar stories connected to blackthorn, elder, and furze being the gauze. And I'll be telling those really from when we get to Lunacer onwards sessions. So we'll go. Anyway, whilst focus on the thought of protection of growing oaks, let's not forget about the myth of the oak king in the summer and the holly king in winter. The holly, and I don't think I've got the pictures. No. Anyway, the holly, when the holly up against the oak is protecting the oak saplings, the holly's often there first. And the reason there's oak saplings is due to these lovely birds, the jays. Look at that, there's a jay. The natural planters of acorns. They bury these. The idea of them burying them is so that they come back and it's winter food, but they always forget where they bury the things. So they end up being the planters of the oak saplings. And they can actually get amongst the brambles and do this as well when the brambles are thin, and then the brambles get thick, up comes the oak. So there we go, the jay's starting off. Here's another one. There's a lovely one. The jay there is about to dig a hole. I think there's a hole being dug there, and the jay is about to pop that in. He's looking around to make sure nothing's going to take the acorn away. And for the people in the US, there's your nice blue jay. It's got 2 acorns there and is about to land and do exactly the same thing there, which is a lovely picture. And as I say, they put them there, the jays, and they forget about them. And that's why we have oaks. Now, another plus about holly is protecting the oak from lightning. Oaks were known as symbolic for Bridget, the fiery arrow, as that translates out. And the fiery arrow also translates out as lightning, because there wasn't an ancient word for lightning. And the oak itself, it actually is a tree that attracts lightning more than any other tree. So it's more likely to catch a light and create fire. Fire that smoulders, can be taken home for the hearth, and the hearth and the fire, and keeping the fire burning. That's another Bridget symbol as well. But I'll bring all this back up at Imbolg again. However, if holly is by the oak, the needles on the holly leaves actually receives the lightning, not the oak. So the holly actually protects the oak as well. Now, thick brambles, they can be a problem for oak. Very good for up to 3 years to have the bramble around the oak. And during that time, the nutrition for the oak is mainly coming up from the taproot. But after about 3 years, the oak needs more and more light. And the nitrogen is great from the taproots that's put there by the brambles, which is fantastic. But when the oak tries to wean from that and feed from the light and the sunlight, if that light is difficult to get to, and the young tree finds it can't get the light due to the density of brambles, unfortunately, the oak sapling can die. So that's a situation when human intervention does help. It helps considerably. But to reduce this human intervention, there is patience needed, because after the Brambles foundation created the foundations, Brambles came along, their sole foundation plant, allow other trees to come in. Birch and willow, for instance. You got the brambles, you got the firs, maybe. Let through the air, along comes the birch and the willow as well from seeding. Let that happen. That creates a nice forestry foundation. And when birch and willow have created that foundation along with the brambles, the birch and the willow actually stop the brambles being so dominating, and along the jays can come and put their acorns in, and the oaks can grow very safely then. And funnily enough, the oaks cause the foundation birches to wean away, and that's when you get the more chieftain trees develop. Anyway, it's then with the birch and willow, oaks have a much greater chance and of getting to the light after 3 years old. So there we go, symbiotic woodland in the making. Now I'd like to show you a meme that I believe has connections to rewilding. Here's a meme here. There we go. Bring that meme up. Give you a moment to ponder over that. That's great. You might be familiar with it already. It's been bouncing around Twitter and Facebook quite a lot in the last week or two. And one person responded to a Facebook posting, it was under this posting. It says, well, what do you suggest we do? And the person that posted it was actually a lovely woman called Miriam Erasmus. Here's a picture of her. She's a popular singer-songwriter. She was very popular in the 70s around Europe. She'd be at the Cambridge Folk Festival and all the big folky events. But she's, I think is she in her 80s? I don't know. She's probably reached 80 or at least late 70s now, but still touring, still performing. Beautiful woman, mainly in South Africa. She lives in South Africa. She's still touring. Anyway, her response was to that, well, what should we do about it then? And she said, and she responded, let's bring you back to the meme. And she said, well, as an educator, I suggest homeschooling with subjects that really matter, starting with the child's immediate environment and how to care for that and working outwards as they grow. Now, as a wife and mother, I would suggest feeding and nurturing the family so they don't get ill in the first place. And as a mediator, I would suggest that we look within ourselves for truths and don't expect others to find them for us. As a citizen, I would suggest we take care of each other and find ways to form an infrastructure that suits us. As an anarchist, I would hope to be self-sufficient and not need anyone telling me what to do and when. And as an artist, to show Miriam again, as an artist, I would hope that everyone would find ways of self-expression through the arts. And as a gardener, I would suggest that everyone grow their own food and share any extras. So there we go. And I think from that, there was a rewilding poem that I got. And it's not mine, but anyway, I'll explain it. This is a lovely rewilding poem that I think follows that. This one, yeah, well, it comes and goes. This one, it's actually called Rewilding. I got it off of Medium. And this is by Sarah Carbonell. So this sums up what I've been trying to say. When we were born as babes, we were brought into this world wide-eyed and wild wandering. We brimmed with a thirst for life, so strong that the raw desire to talk, touch, breathe seemed almost unbearable. Our first steps sent waves of shock and awe coursing through our bodies, and the shoelaces we failed to tie weighed upon our hearts. As we grew older, we were taught to behave. We were taught not to cry, not to scream in public. We were taught to sit still in class. We were taught to do as we were told, or we would be punished. Maybe somewhere along our life's quest, we forgot how to cry, we forgot how to scream, we forgot how to let our bodies dance like the soft sensual animals that we long to be. Our hearts ache, our feet yearn, our skin crawls to remind us of our liveliness and of life knocking at our doors, enchanting us to come out to play again. So that was Rewilding. Yeah, so that was it. That was really Rewilding. If I missed any of your comments, if any more questions, comments I'd made, feel free to say a bit more. And I thank you so much for your support, making this possible, trying to get my, right at the end, the computer's playing up at the moment for some reason. Sorry about this. Oh, there it is. It's back again. All right. Okay. And everything's behaved so well up until now. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, as I say, thank you for your continued support. As I say, I'll repeat that again, because without your support, I couldn't fund these shows being on. So there's the support link, if you can. Still not covering weekly expenses and annual expenses of keeping the show on the road. So with your help, please, £1, euro, or $1 or more per month. It goes a long way to keeping the show afloat and around every Sunday. So thank you. And as I say, if you're not comfortable going through Patreon and who uses PayPal, there is the Buy Me a Coffee, which takes any regular sort of card. Anyway, coming up, let's see, the Nature Folklore sessions. That was the end of the Summer Blooming series. And so we're on to sustainable practices for 3 weeks. So 3rd of July, Sacred Actions. That's the book that started this idea off. So during the series, we'll be looking at what we are doing with land, water, forestry, and where we live. And it's not showing. Dana Driscoll brought that book out. She's going to be on the 3rd week anyway. But we'll look at our sustainable practices in relation to nature folklore stories and wisdom that we share. And 10th, I don't have a picture of this, but we're carrying this on. It's a 3-week series. So 10th of July, reviewing what we actually do as sustainable practices. So I hope we'll get guests for that as well. And then we've got Dana Driscoll. She's on the 3rd one of this, 17th of July, and giving us some working examples and introducing her follow-up book, which is actually going to be Sacred Actions Journal, which is it's a real hands-on thing. Then on the 24th of July, I've got a picture for that, and this is a lovely one, is that I should be taking that. I know what I should be doing, getting rid of that for you. 4-part Lunacy series, Bilberry Sunday and garlands. That's going to be on the 24th of July, and that's what the garlands there represents that. I thought that was lovely. Any more comments from you? There we go. Anyone still around? Yes, you're still here. Thank you. That's lovely. It's been great presenting this Rewilding. I hope you got something from it. Thank you for our lone guest today with a beautiful poem, Catherine Dorman, or Professor Catherine Dorman, as I found out. I'm not sure where she's based. It's Eastern USA, Northeastern, somewhere, but I haven't quite put my finger on where. Hopefully we'll get more from her at some point. If you're watching this broadcast as the archive afterwards, please keep commenting and asking questions, and I do come back from time to time and update and answer your comments. So as I say, I've thoroughly enjoyed being this, and Patricia up there from Vancouver Island has just joined, and to say hello, and we'll say bye-bye. I hope you catch it earlier. And Sherry enjoyed this lovely informative session. Thanks very much, Trona, who gave us a lot of lovely postings there. Thank you, and everyone contributed to a great show. Thank you. Subscribe below. Click the bell icons on YouTube, and it reminds you what's coming up next week as well. So it leaves me to wish you a lovely week, a lovely, safe week full of wonder, inspirations, lots of enchantments, lots of rewilding, of course. And I think that's pretty much as I've got to offer here. Been fabulous having you join us, and enjoy presenting to you. Be back next Sunday. And if you've got poems and stories related to what's coming up, love you to perform them either live or pre-recorded. Fantastic. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. As I say, go ahead and have a fabulous, inspired, enchanted, rewilded week. So until next Sunday, play well. I think that's all there is from me. Thank you. Bye. Thank you so much. Have a lovely week.